You believe you walk a solid earth. You believe the faces you meet are transparent, their motives clear as daylight. You trust the reassuring cadence of society, the unspoken rules that seem to promise safety, fairness. But what if the true battlefield isn't out there, under the glaring sun or in the shadowed alleys of the physical world? What if the most critical wars are fought in the silent, unseen landscapes of the mind, yours and theirs? What if the gravest dangers are not the obvious brutes, the declared enemies, but those who slip past your defenses, cloaked in familiarity, even affection? Their influence a slow, creeping tide that reshapes your very essence before you even sense the dampness. Carl Jung, a cartographer of the soul's deepest territories, knew that the human psyche is a realm of staggering power, of luminous heights and abyssal depths. He understood that what we don't know about ourselves, what remains buried in the unconscious, doesn't simply vanish. It festers, it projects, it seeks a host, and often that host is you. Think about it. That gnawing anxiety after a seemingly pleasant conversation, that sudden, inexplicable wave of guilt that washes over you, though you've committed no wrong. That feeling of being perpetually off balance, of walking on eggshells around someone who seems to need so much, yet gives so little of true substance. These are not random psychic weather patterns. These are echoes of another's internal storm, a storm they refuse to acknowledge, a darkness they are desperate to offload. You become an unwitting vessel, a mirror reflecting not your own face, but the contorted hidden aspects of theirs. They may not even be aware of this exchange, this psychic theft. That is the insidious nature of it. They are not monsters in the conventional sense. They are often wounded, fragmented, driven by forces they cannot name, let alone control. And in their blindness, they become conduits for a peculiar kind of destruction, a quiet erosion of your spirit, a slow colonization of your inner world. You try to be good, empathetic, understanding. You extend your hand, open your heart, believing you are offering solace, support. But what if that very empathy is the unlocked door through which these unseen influences pour? What if your desire to heal, to fix, becomes the chain that binds you to their psychic chaos? They speak of their pain, and it resonates with your own capacity for compassion. They present a carefully constructed image of themselves, perhaps the martyr forever wronged, perhaps the flawless paragon, radiating an almost unnatural perfection, perhaps the perpetually fragile soul, needing your constant vigilance. And you, in your humanity, respond. But beneath the surface of these interactions, a deeper, more ancient drama unfolds. It's the drama of the unlived life, the unacknowledged shadow, seeking expression, seeking validation, seeking to merge with, and ultimately overwhelm, any light that comes too close. The world tells you to be strong, but what kind of strength does it mean? The strength of denial? The strength of a thicker mask? Or the terrifying strength of radical self-awareness? The kind that dares to look into the abyss of another's unconscious projections and say, "This is not mine to carry." The kind that recognizes the subtle artistry of the emotional puppeteer, the one who pulls your strings with invisible threads of guilt, obligation, or feigned helplessness. These individuals, often charming, often intelligent, often occupying positions of trust or intimacy, are masters of making their needs feel like your sacred duty, their anxieties like your personal failing. They don't necessarily plot this in the dead of night. Their manipulation is often a desperate, unconscious strategy for psychic survival. They are drowning, and instead of learning to swim, they will instinctively pull down anyone who offers a hand. Their internal landscape is a barren wasteland, and they seek to cultivate their withered gardens with your life force, your emotional energy, your very sense of self. You will feel it as a constant drain, a weariness that no amount of sleep can cure, a creeping sense of self-doubt that whispers you are never enough, always too much, perpetually in the wrong. This is the first sign. Your own inner compass beginning to spin erratically, confused by an external magnetic field that is not your own. Recognize this. The pristine, unblemished surface often conceals a terrified, chaotic core. The individual who presents an unyielding facade of perfection, who never errs, never stumbles, who embodies every societal ideal with an almost artificial grace, they are often living in mortal dread of their own shadow. The persona, that social mask Jung described, is not just a tool for them, it is a fortress. And everything that is spontaneous, vulnerable, authentically human within themselves is locked away in the deepest dungeon, starved and silent. But that repressed energy does not die. It congeals. It becomes a toxic reservoir. And because they cannot bear to look at it within themselves, they will project its poison onto you. Your laughter will seem too loud, your grief too messy, your passions too untamed. You become a living reminder of everything they have disowned, and their discomfort, their judgment, their subtle, or not so subtle, attempts to correct you, to polish your edges until you fit into their sterile world, are merely expressions of their war against their own hidden self. They demand you wear a mask that complements theirs, creating a shared illusion, a folie à deux where authenticity goes to die. Living with such a person is like living in a meticulously curated museum where you are an exhibit, expected to hold your pose, never to disturb the suffocating order. Your own soul begins to feel like an ill-fitting garment, itchy and constricting as you unconsciously try to conform to their impossible unspoken standards. The power they wield is the power of shame, the power of making you feel fundamentally flawed for simply being real. And then there are those whose inner world is not so much repressed as it is actively, violently leaking. These are the souls dominated by their unhealed wounds, their complexes, those splintered off parts of the psyche that take on a life of their own, erupting without warning, turning the present moment into a replay of past traumas. One moment, they are sunshine and warmth. The next, a careless word, a perceived slight, an innocent gesture from you triggers an emotional explosion that leaves you reeling, bewildered. It is not you they are reacting to, not truly. They are reacting to ghosts, to the echoes of old betrayals, ancient abandonments, deep-seated insecurities that surge up and possess them. You become the screen upon which their internal horror films are projected. Their accusations are bizarre, their sorrow bottomless, their anger terrifyingly disproportionate. And in the aftermath, when the storm subsides, they may be contrite, loving even, leaving you in a state of profound confusion, addicted to the fleeting calm, desperately trying to navigate the emotional minefield they represent. You become an expert in placation, a master of self-censorship, constantly scanning their moods, trying to anticipate the next eruption, shrinking yourself to avoid triggering the beast. But the beast is not of your making, and it is not yours to tame. It is the howl of their own unmourned pain, a pain they are determined to share, to inflict, until it is mirrored in your own exhausted eyes. This is not relationship, it is emotional shrapnel, and you are perpetually in the blast radius. The subtle puppeteers, those who appear to lean on you, to need you with a desperation that strokes your ego or appeals to your deepest compassion. These are perhaps the most insidious. They don't roar, they whimper, they don't demand. They plead, often silently, with eyes that are pools of unspoken suffering. They are the psychic vampires, not in the gothic sense of fanged creatures of the night, but in the far more common and draining reality of those who cannot, or will not, generate their own emotional sustenance. They attach themselves to your vitality, to your empathy, to your capacity for care, and they begin to SEIPHON. Your energy becomes their fuel, your attention their oxygen. At first, it feels good to be needed, to be the strong one, the capable one. But soon you find your own reserves dwindling. You are tired all the time. Your own needs are perpetually deferred, your boundaries eroded by the constant, unspoken demands of their fragility. They master the art of making you feel guilty for wanting space, for having your own life, for not being available 24/7 to soothe their anxieties or affirm their existence. Their victimhood becomes a permanent address, and you are the reluctant, lifelong caretaker. They will tell you or imply that you are the only one who understands, the only one who truly cares, forging a bond that feels like a sacred trust, but is, in reality, a parasitic attachment. The danger here is the slow dissolution of your own self. You forget where they end and you begin. Your life becomes a reaction to their needs, your emotions a reflection of their instability. They do not grow, for they have you to be their crutch, their lung, their heart. And in this process you are diminished, hollowed out, a beautiful, vibrant vessel slowly emptied until all that remains is a dull ache and the haunting question, what happened to me? And what of those who wield morality like a cudgel, those who cloak their judgments and their need for control in the sanctimonious robes of righteousness? They are the self-appointed guardians of virtue, quick to point out your flaws, your deviations from their rigid, often hypocritical standards. Their pronouncements are heavy with condemnation, designed to make you feel small, impure, perpetually in need of their guidance. But look closer. Beneath the veneer of piety, you will often find a seething cauldron of their own repressed desires, their own unacknowledged darkness. Their harsh judgment of your perceived sins is merely a projection of the war they are losing within themselves. They cannot bear their own shadow, so they cast it onto you, making you the scapegoat for their internal conflicts. They will use sacred texts, ethical principles, societal norms, not as tools for genuine enlightenment or connection, but as weapons to shame, to control, to elevate themselves by diminishing others. Their concern is a disguise for their contempt. Their advice is a demand for conformity. They create a prison of shoulds and should-nots, not just for themselves, but for everyone within their sphere of influence. To live under their gaze is to feel perpetually scrutinized, perpetually inadequate. Your natural spontaneity is condemned as recklessness, your joy as frivolity, your desires as dangerous. They are the architects of guilt, and their true aim is not your salvation, but your subjugation to their narrow, fearful worldview. Their own unlived life screams through their condemnations of yours. They are dangerous because they attack your very right to be, to explore, to become, under the guise of saving your soul. The common thread weaving through these destructive patterns is a profound disconnection from self. Whether they project their wounds, hide behind a flawless mask, erupt with an ancient rage, drain your life force, or condemn you from a self-constructed moral high ground, they are all, in essence, running from themselves. They are terrified of the silence where their true self might speak. They are terrified of the vulnerability that genuine connection requires. And so, they engage in these elaborate, unconscious strategies to avoid the excruciating work of self-confrontation. And you, if you are not vigilant, if you are not anchored deeply in your own truth, become a casualty in their internal war. You become a pawn in their psychic games, a resource for their depleted energies, a dumping ground for their toxic waste. This is not love. This is not friendship. This is not genuine relating. It is a distortion, a dangerous charade that can cost you your peace, your energy, your very sense of who you are. The first act of liberation is to see these patterns not as personal attacks, though they feel intensely personal, but as the outward manifestations of another's inner brokenness. This seeing is not about blame, it is about clarity. It is about drawing a line in the sand of your own psyche and declaring, "This far and no further." The world will try to convince you that power lies in domination, in control, in the accumulation of external accolades. But true power, the kind that cannot be taken, the kind that endures, is forged in the crucible of self-awareness. It is the power to perceive the invisible currents of psychological influence, to discern the subtle shifts in energy, to recognize the manipulative hook before it sets in your heart. This perception is not a gift bestowed upon a chosen few. It is a skill honed in the silence of introspection, in the courageous willingness to examine your own reactions, your own vulnerabilities, your own shadow. Why does this person's approval feel so vital? Why does their criticism cut so deeply? What unhealed part of you resonates with their particular brand of dysfunction? Answering these questions is not an act of weakness, but of profound strength. It is how you begin to reclaim your sovereignty. It is how you learn to differentiate between your truth and the distorted narratives they attempt to impose upon you. When you understand your own inner landscape, you are no longer easily lured into the treacherous terrains of others. Your self-reliance becomes your shield, your discernment your sword. The journey to this kind of self-reliance is often paved with periods of intense discomfort, of painful disillusionment. It means acknowledging that some people, even those you love, even those you have history with, may be fundamentally incapable of meeting you in a healthy, reciprocal way. Not because they are inherently evil, but because their own unconscious burdens are too heavy, their own inner chaos too overwhelming. They are trapped, and they will, consciously or unconsciously, try to trap you with them. The art of manipulation is subtle, a whispered suggestion here, a strategically deployed tear there, a suffocating blanket of concern that smothers your independence. They become experts at making their problems your responsibility. They will leverage your compassion, your sense of duty, your fear of conflict, your desire to be seen as good or kind. They will make you doubt your own perceptions, question your own sanity. Am I being too sensitive? Am I misunderstanding? Maybe it's me. This self-doubt is the beachhead they seek to establish in your mind. Once that seed is planted, it can grow into a suffocating weed, choking your intuition, clouding your judgment. The greatest defense against this psychic encroachment is not a louder voice, nor a more forceful argument. It is the cultivation of an unbreakable inner silence, a silence so profound, so anchored, that the chaotic noise of their projections, their demands, their emotional storms simply cannot penetrate. In this silence, you begin to hear the quiet, steady voice of your own intuition, your own deepest knowing. This is the voice that gets drowned out by the drama, the guilt trips, the emotional blackmail. To cultivate this silence requires discipline. The discipline to disengage, the discipline to not take the bait, the discipline to observe without absorbing, the discipline to create space, emotional, mental, sometimes even physical space, where you can reconnect with your own center. This is not about becoming cold or unfeeling. It is about becoming wise. It is about understanding that you cannot save someone who is determined to drown, especially if they are intent on pulling you under with them. Your responsibility is to your own psychic integrity first, for if you lose that, you have nothing of value to offer anyone, least of all yourself. This inner discipline also involves the courage to face the repressed shadow in others without flinching and, crucially, without becoming its caretaker. When someone explodes in irrational anger, it's their shadow speaking. When they drip passive-aggressive venom, it's their shadow seeping out. When they radiate an aura of constant victimhood, It's their shadow begging for a light it refuses to generate from within. You are not obligated to engage with these manifestations. You are not obligated to absorb their darkness. Your role is not to be their analyst, their confessor, or their emotional punching bag. Your role is to protect your own light. Sometimes this means walking away. Sometimes it means setting boundaries that feel like acts of war to the other person, but are, in fact, acts of profound self-preservation for you. These boundaries are not walls to keep love out, but rather demarcations to keep violation at bay. They are a testament to your self-respect. And those who are truly capable of healthy relating, even if they stumble, will eventually respect them. Those who are mired in their unconscious dramas will rage against them, for your boundaries expose their mechanisms of control and their desperate need for enmeshment. Their reaction is not your responsibility. The path to psychic freedom often leads through the valley of detachment. This is not the detachment of apathy, but the detachment of profound understanding. It is the ability to see the patterns, to understand the underlying dynamics without getting entangled in the emotional charge. It's like watching a storm from a safe harbor. You can acknowledge its power, its fury, but you are not tossed about by its waves. This kind of detachment allows you to love people, to care for them, from a place of wholeness rather than from a place of codependent need or fearful obligation. You can offer compassion without offering yourself as a sacrifice. You can recognize their pain without making it your own. This is an advanced skill, born of rigorous self-work and a fierce commitment to your own well-being. It requires you to release the illusion that you can change anyone but yourself. It requires you to accept the painful truth that some people will choose their darkness, their familiar suffering, over the terrifying uncertainty of growth and healing. And that is their choice, not your failure. Victory in this internal war is not about vanquishing an external enemy. It is not about proving them wrong or making them see the error of their ways. That is a fool's errand, an endless drain of your precious life force. True victory is the reclamation of your own psychic territory. It is the restoration of your inner peace. It is the unwavering trust in your own perceptions, your own worth, your own path. It is the liberation that comes from realizing that their darkness does not have to extinguish your light. You stand in your truth, not defiantly, but calmly, with the quiet strength of a mountain that cannot be moved by the winds of another's turmoil. You become a sovereign being, master of your own inner kingdom, no longer susceptible to the unconscious invasions that once threatened to overwhelm you. The patterns may still appear on your horizon: the manipulator, the persona bearer, the shadow projector, the moralizer, the complex-driven soul, the psychic drain. But they no longer find purchase within you. You see them for what they are: echoes of unhealed wounds, not reflections of your worth or dictates of your reality. This journey of discernment, of boundary setting, of detachment is not for the faint of heart. It will demand courage you didn't know you possessed. It will require you to disappoint people, to be misunderstood, perhaps even to be vilified by those who are threatened by your burgeoning autonomy. They will call you selfish when you prioritize your well-being. They will call you cold when you refuse to be consumed by their emotional fires. They will accuse you of abandonment when you step away from their toxic orbit. Understand this: their accusations are often a measure of their own desperation, their fear of losing control, their terror of having to face themselves without you as a buffer, a distraction, or a resource. Let their noise be just that: noise. Your allegiance is to the quiet, insistent truth that resides within your own soul. That truth is your true north. The ultimate act of power is to realize that you do not need to participate in their dramas. You do not need to fix them. You do not need their approval. You do not need to understand the labyrinthine complexities of their brokenness beyond recognizing its effects on you. Your primary sacred duty is to the unfolding of your own life, the cultivation of your own inner garden, the nurturing of your own unique and precious flame. And from that place of profound self-possession, you may, if you choose, offer genuine compassion. Not the enabling pity that keeps people stuck, but the clear-sighted empathy that acknowledges their struggle without becoming ensnared by it. You become a lighthouse, not a lifeboat. You shine your light, and those who are ready to navigate by it will find their way. Those who prefer the storm will remain in the storm. It is not your burden to decide for them. So I ask you now, as you stand at this precipice of awareness, what will you choose? Will you continue to be an unwitting actor in the unconscious scripts of others, a vessel for their unexpressed pain, a casualty of their internal wars? Or will you dare to reclaim your mind, your energy, your very life force? Will you commit to the rigorous, often uncomfortable, but ultimately liberating path of self-knowledge and psychic sovereignty? The choice, as always, is yours. But know this, the world is desperate for individuals who are awake, who are whole, who are anchored in their own truth. Be one of them. Do not let the unconscious shadows of others define the contours of your existence. Look within, fortify your spirit, and then step forward into your life with clarity, with courage, and with an unshakable knowing of who you truly are, beyond the reach of those who would unknowingly or knowingly seek to diminish you. This is not just about avoiding danger, it is about stepping into your full power. The time for playing small, for being a psychic shock absorber, is over. The time for your true self to emerge, radiant and unyielding, is now. Take a deep breath. The battle for your mind is the only one worth winning. Win it.